Roshi and Kozan, thank you so much for leading us in this final Gathering Dharma session. We'll tell you a little bit more about our plans for the coming year at the end of this, but as our final time together for this year, just thank you so much for being with us through this time. For those of you who are maybe here for the first time as well, and especially grateful for the generosity of all of those of you who have given dana to make this possible and to support Upaya and our work here. So deep bows of gratitude to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Noah. Thank you, everybody. I see many old friends gathered. You know, as we've done this series on Gathering Dharma, which really started during the pandemic, when we wanted to be a kind of resource at a time where all over the world, people were in lockdown and were dealing with just incredible existential issues, but also social, environmental, and political issues. And we just felt it was important in this first arc of the pandemic for us to do this socially engaged Buddhist training. It was just an amazing series with hundreds of people. You know, it was an invitation for all of us to not only be in our contemplative hearts, but also to meet the world in a way that was grounded and that brought together both love and justice, to quote Dr. King. And you know, then we continued through the years, because we feel that socially engaged Buddhism is an extraordinary view and process that can have an effect on what is happening in the world today, much in the spirit of what Ambedkar did in the 1900s in relation to the Dalit, the untouchable community, and moving out of the social structure of hierarchy in the Indian culture, the complex and many valenced Indian culture, into a view that was out of the Buddhist world. So forgive me. The world is also tapping on all of our doors. In any case, we began this series with Gathering Dharma by using a line from the Dhammapada, because so many of us have been polarized and feeling a lot of aversion toward what is happening in the world and those who are making it happen on the side of harm. And the line is, hatred is never appeased by hatred. And when the situation in Ukraine and then in Gaza in the most recent past began to ramp up, and militarism really began to show its face at a whole other level in the world, we put some words on our website. They've been slightly modified over the past few years, and I want to share the current version. Because we felt at Upaya that it is important to reflect our view of what is happening in relation to events in Sudan, in Myanmar, in Gaza, and in the 30 other wars and genocides that are happening around the planet, and the rise of militarism globally. And the words are this: Upaya Zen Center's global community finds itself grieving the tragic loss of life in Ukraine, Gaza, Israel, and the 30 other wars and genocides raging on our planet at this moment. And just notice, at first we said wars, but wars are two-sided. So this is parenthetical, and genocides are kind of one-sided, as most of you know. And we felt it was important to actually put both of those terms into this statement. We stand upright and open as we call not only for a ceasefire, but a ceasing of war and genocide in our time. Our hearts cannot turn away from the truth of pervasive suffering, sorrow, and death as a result of the violence of militarism in our world. And for this, we urge that this be a time of deep dialogue, reaching past differences, of recognizing that the terrible cost of war and genocide, it passes through generations, that the impact of militarism on our earth itself is inestimable, and that we must realize our basic humanity and sanity for the sake of all at this time and those who are yet to be born. So this is the upgraded version of our statement on our homepage. This will be reflected in what Kozan is going to be sharing in relation to the rising up of political structures, plutocracy, and oligarchy. They're having an immense effect on many geographies. We've also shared in this series some words from John Peacock, a Buddhist teacher in England I haven't met, but I've read his work. And I think it's really important because, we have been critiqued for being socially and environmentally engaged, as if this wasn't a Buddhist thing. And needless to say, if you look at the history of Buddha and of Buddhism on and off throughout the 2,500 years of Buddhism, the engagement with structural violence and with social issues is something that is pervasive throughout the history of Buddhism, on and off, Anyway, John has written a really powerful piece, and in it he has these words. He says, if our quest for personal flourishing in this world through the study and practice of, quotes, Buddhism, doesn't lead us to question the structures that give rise to hunger, inequality, prejudice, and injustice, then our, quotes, Buddhism exists in a rarefied atmosphere, divorced from the struggle for existence of billions of beings on this planet. And I haven't met John, but I really resonate with these words of John's, and I feel them in my marrow. And I think that's why Kozan and I, in the past years, and now Dainan is joining us in the upcoming radical series, we are completely dedicated to being a bridge that brings, if you will, the two shores of the contemplative and social and environmental engagement to have be a bridge, but also that be a river that runs between these two shores. And that's why we've offered Gathering Dharma this past year. We just want to explore what it means and to actualize what it means to realize our basic humanity at this time. What it means to speak truth to power, to take action in the midst of many who are feeling, and sometimes even us, futility, and sometimes apathy, or sometimes glorifying individuals or situations which are associated with violence. And we also know that it's so important for us to connect and to foster community and solidarity at this time, and to affirm our vows, and not turn away from the truth of suffering, and to dedicate ourselves to transform suffering personally and institutionally, and also to find joy, revolutionary joy in the midst of this tangle. Yeah. And to use imagination to liberate narrow views and to see a world that's just and compassionate. So I thank you, and Kozan thanks you for being with us today. And we'd love to invite you, as we do every month, to put one word in the chat about, what's alive in you right now, and also what bioregion you're in, what watershed you're in, so we can get a sense of the geography, internal and external, that we're sharing. And Kozan, would you share some of what's being put into the chat?
Please write to everyone so that they don't only go to one of us.
They're going to you, Kodo. Yeah, I'd love to share some of these and know that you can read them with me on the chat. So Jill Laurie writes inspiration, and Linda writes healing. Carolyn Pars writes just power. Joe feels connection. Tracy Steele writes appreciation is alive for her. And Emily shares rest and nourishment. Donna Estes shares with us love and kindness and prosperity for all. Amelia Carroll, gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Schwartz shares uncertainty. And Jane also writes connection. Sheila Wharton shares with us from London in the UK. Struggle is alive. Struggle is alive. Nancy from Austin, Texas shares with us a sense of hopefulness, hope. And Joan Stam, somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, shares poetry, a beautiful feeling. And people joining in from all over: Denver, Flagstaff, Georgia, San Diego, Spokane, Maine. And Brooks reminding us that it's the solstice. The solstice was just yesterday, and the beauty of that. And Suzanne from Whidbey Island, awaken. So a lot of us here today, almost 200. And it's wonderful to hear where you all are and this kind of sense that's alive for you all. A lot of people sharing gratitude and community. Yeah. Anything jump out at you, Roshi?
Everything. Yeah, Kosan, what I'd love to do, and I've been looking at the stream of responses, and one word comes up for me that's really resonating, and that's vulnerable.
Mm.
Yeah, vulnerable.
Mm.
Not only is that touching me personally, but also it's actually touching all of us, know it or not. And in this way, I'd love to ask you to take some moments to bring us into practice.
Yeah, I'd love to. So as we do, we'll spend a little while just sitting together. And I invite you to find a posture or a seat that allows you to be somewhat upright and still, to just be where you are. And you can hood your eyes looking down, or maybe close them if that's most comfortable for you. And just take a moment to find the breath in the body. Allowing the sensation of the breath to be alive in you. Allowing the body to be the body. experience to be experience, just gathering your awareness here, right where you are. And beginning by recalling your intention for being here, for practicing. Why do you practice? Why do you sit? What is your deepest intention? And with whatever comes to the surface in response, recalling this bodhisattva vow that guides us to be with, show up to, and transform the suffering of the world. And rather than just having that thought, we can feel that vow by bringing to mind someone or some community that's suffering. This may be those suffering from violence and oppression in Gaza or at the border or in your neighborhood, city. It may be a friend or community member who's facing loss, hardship. But we all have this near to us. And so really bringing it to mind, bringing someone to mind, and allowing this kind of natural sense to come alongside, to emerge. This felt sense of being with. This porousness and vulnerability, as well as this kind and generous heart. And in this way, we feel the truth that we sit with the whole world, not alone or not just in this border of a body, but with all beings. So allowing that to be a felt sense. And with hearts open, bringing our awareness to the breath in the body. Really finding it in the deep belly if it wants to be there, or just finding your breath wherever it is. The chest, maybe even up near the throat. Allowing the body to breathe. And anchoring the awareness of life in this opening and closing that continues. And for this short period of practice together, our invitation is really to not make anything extra. Allowing this sensation and awareness, this life, to be enough. Each breath, a beginning. Each breath, fresh and new. We do not have to create or solve what arises. We can just bear witness. we may notice the habit of following a thought, turning a thought into a world. When this happens, we can say, ah, yes, I know this, and just return to this present moment. Do not have to figure out thoughts or sensations as they emerge. We know that the less we do, the more we see, the more we feel. Just returning to this body upright and at ease. And then as we notice the habit to make a world of a thought, we can just return. And as we do, we might say quietly to ourselves, don't know, don't know. And allowing those words, this touchstone, to open up a vista of just bearing witness. The arising of arising. Having taken this backward step to practice together in this way, you can take a few moments, some breaths, to just appreciate this home of boundlessness, this vast space that is the inheritance of each moment, and just being, just allowing. Dogen invites us into this sensibility with a kind of poem. He says to study the way of enlightenment is to study the self. And to study the self is to forget this self. This forgetting is to be actualized by all things. To be one or non-separate, all things. And when this occurs, this sense of body and mind drops away. No trace remains. And this no trace continues endlessly. maybe finding the courage to open up the hand of thought in this way because we have each other, because we practice with one another and all beings. And just returning to this breath, this moment, this body. In these final breaths, noticing any clarity or compassion that arises through this practice, and vowing to meet one another during this time and to meet the world through the benefits of this wisdom and compassion. We can bow together. Thanks.
Oh, Kozan, thank you so much. Yeah. So I want to recall as we sit with this practice that Kozan has shared, the strength that arises in us working with the three tenets that our teacher, Glassman Roshi, articulated so many years ago. What is it to sit with radical openness, with beginner's mind, to sit with not knowing that our lives are so often identified within this fabricated landscape of knowing, which actually makes it difficult for the next thing to freely happen in our experience. And I felt like Bernie was a master of that. It's something that is against the stream of our Western knowing culture. And then the second tenet of bearing witness, what is it to come alongside? What is it to be one with whatever is arising? It's an experience, I think, what Kozan was opening for us in the practice of non-separateness, that we are actualized by all things in this very moment, whatever is present. The computer in front of me, the 200 of you gathered, Kozan's face glistening off of, my monitor, so to speak. Knowing Noah's in the background, being with so many of you. Hideo, who's my good Japanese friend, our good Japanese friend. Frank, just so many good friends. You're actualizing me and Kozan at this very moment. And from this, the third tenet of what it is to engage. engage in a non-prescriptive way, in a way that is fresh and aligned with what is happening in the present moment. But also things in the past are influencing us. And those influences can be generational. I think of what's happening in Israel and in Gaza. I think of what's happening in our indigenous communities. I think of what's happening in Myanmar. Also, what I hear in my interviews with people who come here and practice. My Chinese students and Korean students who carry war in their bones, many of whom had parents coming here with nothing, escaping horrors, and their children becoming successful in, a conventional way, but still carrying the echoes of suffering. Also, because of a resident that we have in our community here, remarkable Chinese poet who's a Chinese dissident, been thinking so much of what it means to actually speak truth to power in our society at this time. Whether it's this man who spent 2 years in a prison for protesting in his country, and 1 year in solitary, 1 year in hard labor. But I'm also thinking about Ai Weiwei and what he experienced and what he's showing and sharing as an artist. I'm also thinking of the Russian dissident, Navalny, and the cost that sometimes it takes to speak truth to power. I'm thinking about the Jews in Israel who are protesting Netanyahu and the war. It takes a lot of groundedness and courage to do what, Thai, in the early version of the precepts of interbeing, where even if it means the loss of your life, speaking truth to power is really important. And thinking about Navalny and kind of the last words that he landed in our consciousness, those of us who were awake to him, this extraordinary Russian man who just didn't stop until they stopped him, but it did not stop. Those last words were, "You are not allowed to give up. You are not allowed to give up." I mean, it's just so outrageous. Even in this practice that we do around surrender, around letting go. The letting go is of a particular landscape. The letting go is of our small self, of our sense of being separate from any being or thing. And the showing up is what Navalny, and I think many of our teachers, Bernie, Thai, Mahagosananda, Alan Sanoki, many have called to us, do not give up. Even as Alan is in his time of letting go. So here we are together in a kind of inflection point in our world. And what as you know, Kozan and I, as friends in the Dharma, you all as friends in this practice, in this community, in this relationship, what's ballast for us as we are in this little boat in very rough waters? I think that it's important to understand, you know, part of that ballast is very much in what Kozan shared in the practice. What is it to not turn away from everything? What is it to be actualized by all things, all beings? What is it to sit with not knowing? And these qualities that we've touched into in the time of the practice, including the silence that we shared, you know, are qualities that are associated with the Buddha, of course, which means to be awake. And also qualities that are associated with what it means to be a bodhisattva, one who is dedicated to the path of awakening and understanding that path is completely directed to the welfare of all beings. And that's what we work tirelessly for. I mean, it's one Dharma door, you know. I think that those who choose the hyper-monastic, in the cave path, my hands together, I bow to you, you're probably not online right now. But I think a lot of us are on this path of the bodhisattva, and we don't seek easy situations, which is one of the characteristics of the bodhisattva's path. That actually what we come to understand is that putting ourselves, and we know this from Bernie in the charnel grounds, but we also know it from neuroscience, allowing the emergence of compassion in the context of our lived experience causes us to ultimately to flourish. And it's funny, I got an email yesterday from somebody in Holland, you know, saying, the world is so bad. What do I do? And this is what I said, put yourself in harm's way. It's probably pretty rude. But anyway, I gave a kind of nicer story to make it more digestible. Maybe it wasn't that nice, okay. But anyway. So, you know, one of our good friends, Norman Fisher, who's also a Roshi, he's written a lot, and I've talked a lot, thanks to Norman's teachings, you know, about the bodhisattva attitude. And this is another piece of ballast for us. And, you know, what is it? And Monjin, in her talk on Wednesday, she focused on this. The bodhisattva attitude means that we generate an attitude, a climate, a view, a heart of generosity and appreciation. Not one of entitlement, not one of greed, of fear, of clutching, but one that's fundamentally generous. And, you know, sidebar, of course, is to say that, you know, all this online things that we do at UPI, 99%, it's all possible because of your generosity. Everything is for free. So give freely, please. As we move through this time in a structure that is high risk for us, but an imperative. And, you know, this attitude is that we hold hopefully here at Upaya, and that you are part of, is a reflection of our very character. You know, as Norman says, it's our stance, it's our point of view. We trust. Trust is an attitude of generosity. I mean, it's the very atmosphere that colors our way of seeing the world, of seeing reality. And I think that's what Navalny meant. Do not give up. Do not turn away from anything at this point. Actualize appamada, care and conscientiousness and imagination. So I want to call out, as we're in this process, a couple of things, just as John Peacock shared. If your Buddhism is dissociated, at least this is the Dharma door that we pass through in every breath here at Upaya, and I think most of you do. If we don't address issues related to structural violence in societies, we're not engaging the reality of our time. I really appreciated John's words in this regard. And it's to come to this very deep understanding that Buddhism is not an apolitical religious tradition. And many of you have heard me actually address this. I talk about the flattening out of the caste system, women, untouchables, serial killer, being part of the community and so forth. It often looks like for certain Buddhists in the West that Buddhism is apolitical, or that Buddhism espouses neutrality. But I sense, and I think a number of us sense, that this actually reflects socially biased interpretations of ancient sources. And it disallows the reality of Buddhism from a historical perspective. And I think it's really about privilege. It's about privilege that not only we experience in the West, it's in the East as well. It's also in the scholarship of both the Eastern world and the Western world, where perspectives of neutrality and apoliticality make it possible for people to actually avoid the presence of social suffering, the presence of structural violence in our communities, in our societies, in our politics, in our economics, which leads, into what Kozan will share shortly. And what I want to touch in now is to name some of our great teachers and what they've done. And I want to call out at the very beginning our good friend Alan Senauke, who's, spent a lot of time with the Dalit community in India, and has, in a way, made the vision and work of Dr. Ambedkar more visible to us in the West. And just the amazing thing that Ambedkar himself, a Dalit, he actually mobilized an enormous conversion to Buddhism among the so-called untouchable community. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. And in spite of being a Dalit, or maybe because of it, like Malala, in spite of being a woman, and maybe because of it. In any case, Ambedkar was super educated. He was a jurist. He was an economist. He was a social reformer. And he actually was the chief architect of India's constitution. And he had the vision and the incredible courage, the guts to call out India's caste system, which was hyper and continues to be discriminatory and harmful, And he did that. And this is so much about strategy. He looked where inclusion was present, and that was in the geography of Buddhism. And he converted, along with almost 400,000 of people in the Dalit community, to Buddhism. I'd call that good trouble. Thank you, John Lewis. And he literally brought millions of people deemed to be untouchable into social equality. That is just an amazing example. And I just say it because sometimes we feel that we don't have, we're just one little raindrop in the storm and in the community, one small voice. But one person, one of us can really make a difference. And Ambedkar for me is just, as Navalny is, who was not a Buddhist, but nonetheless, Ambedkar became one. An incredible example of, you can visibly make a difference, but many socially engaged Buddhists are completely invisible. But I want to talk about some of the visible ones because I've been fortunate at the age of 82 to work with them, be their friends, study with them, be their student, and so forth. And these are people who have applied insights from the very kind of practice that Kozan shared. But there are also many practices that lead to this sense of non-separateness with all beings and things. They've also applied the precepts to social ills and Dharma teachings to situations of social, political, environmental, and economic suffering and injustice. And maybe the one that, have been closest to, or the two that I've been closest to, but really the first one who changed my life was Thich Nhat Hanh. And I'll say a few more words about Thai, and I'll be teaching actually for Deer Park in a few days. My relationship with Thai's community stays very strong. But I also want to mention Sulak Shivarakta, who's an amazing voice in Thailand. Mahagosananda. I've actually been in a sweat lodge with this amazing Cambodian monk and so on. Arya Ratni of Sri Lanka, who was a close friend and who just died recently. And, these people and others have campaigned relentlessly, have organized millions of new converts. Sulak in particular, but also Thai. And I think also Bhikshuni Dhammananda, moving against, if you will, the gender-biased structures of the Theravadan world, have faced death threats. And I was with her in that particular time. They've been exiled, they've been imprisoned, they've founded schools and universities, they've produced a really important new Buddhist literature about social, environmental, and economic justice. And, not everybody is familiar with the work of Arya Ratni, who was just died recently, but he began the Sarvodaya movement, and Joanna Macy was very close with him, as was I. Then this movement was in Sri Lanka in 1958, and what he did was apply Buddhist principles to rural development and peace-building work. And it touched thousands of villages and who were engaging in community development projects. So, one of the ways is that we can work in our own communities as Arya did and inspired others to work in their communities to lift up people around views of interconnectedness. And also, movements in our communities that educate and empower those on the margins, empower the poor. And of course, Thai, I think he was the one who actually coined the term engaged Buddhism, and this during the war in Vietnam. And he worked and led, in efforts related to nonviolence. And I think he was, very moved, for example, by the work of Dr. King in our country. And when he came to our country in the 60s, which is when I met him, he connected with Dr. King. And that work, that work has moved Upaya deeply. It's part of the heart of what we do here. How do we actualize nonviolence in all aspects of our life? We come off the rails. But Thai's vision of interbeing is something that lives in our marrow. And I want to mention Thai's friend, Sulak Shivaraksha. He was a dissident for sure. He's an activist and a scholar. He worked and continues to work on environmental and social justice issues in Asia. And he founded the International Network along with our good friend, John Watts of Engaged Buddhists. And he is a person for me more than almost any of my good socially engaged Buddhist friends who really faces down governments through criticism. And I just have to say, he's such an example of speaking truth to power. And I want to mention Mahagosananda, this Cambodian monk. Also, he's gone. Sulak is still alive and in his 90s, and he's there pounding the ground with his cane. He's just relentless. Mahagosananda, he led thousands in peaceful walks through the killing fields in Cambodia and seeking reconciliation with Khmer Rouge. And this is what Bernie endeavored to do in Auschwitz, and bearing witness retreats there. And those retreats continue. And in Rwanda, but also in the Bowery. How do we go into the charnel grounds? And I never walked with Mahagosananda. I'm really sorry I missed that opportunity. The charnel ground practice that Bernie was so dedicated to is something also that is so much at the heart of what we try to do here at Upaya. And I'm going to mention a few more because I just have to. The Thai forest monk Prachak, who ordained trees in the forest by wrapping monks' robes around them to save them from loggers. I think of Julia Butterfly in the redwood, living, in the crown of this giant grandmother. I think we need to go to the Northwest and ordain trees. And I want to say, here in the past 6 months at Upaya, we've planted 70 trees. Because this valley at one time, before it was turned into bean fields, was forested. And one of the things that all of us must do, I feel, is to rewild whatever little corner of the earth that we're on. So Prachak, I thank you for what you're doing. And then I think about the Tzu Chi movement with thousands of volunteers who respond to natural and man-made disasters. I mean, people who are volunteers, so many of you are online with us right now, who roll up your sleeves to feed the unsheltered, to work in the prison systems. These are man-made disasters. Or who went to New Orleans after the hurricane, who have gone to areas that have been decimated by fire or earthquake. So I want to hold up a few others. Roshi Robert Aiken, who started the Buddhist Peace Fellowship and who showed up almost to his dying day to protest violence in our world. And Joanna Macy, who's still with us in her 90s. She's one of the bravest human beings I've ever met, who created this work that reconnects. And it's a calling for all of us to reconnect that combines Buddhist teachings with environmental activism. And my great friend who is here a couple of times a year, Rebecca Solnit, who's a wild Buddhist, who uses a Buddhist framework in her work as an environmental activist and as a feminist. And that woman, wow, what a heart and what a mind. And the Dalai Lama. Thank you, Your Holiness. I know you're in a kind of phase of your life that's a little quieter, but your dedication to secular ethics and compassionate action has touched millions of people. And then Roshi Bernie and Jishu, and those of us in the Zen Peacemaker order with the 3 tenets, with bearing witness retreats, with practicing in the charnel ground. Well, many. A few more. Sensei Allen, your work in the prison system with Jarvis and with others, and with Rohingya refugees and with the Dalits. Bless you, beloved Allen. Know that we've all been touched by your incredible vision and courage. And Bhikkhu Bodhi, scholar and translator who will be teaching in our next series and training, Awakening in Action, or Awareness in Action. He founded the Buddhist Global Relief, and he's worked on food security and education projects worldwide, but he speaks loudly and clearly in relation to ending war, ending genocide. And he's Jewish boy, and his voice just cuts right through around what's happening in Gaza. Thank you so much. And I want to talk about Weipon for a minute, who is a Buddhist feminist activist in northern Thailand, and she co-founded the International Women's Partnership for Peace and Justice. She's amazing, and she trains activists in nonviolent action and feminist and anti-oppression work. She works with the LGBTQIA+ in the Asian world, with those who have escaped violence in Myanmar and other ethnic minorities, an incredibly courageous woman. And Mushin Ikeda, thank you for your work in the East Bay Meditation Center, and Diana Winston. And I want to mention Upaya. You know, we've been a platform for over 3 decades for social and environmental advocacy and responsibility and action. And we really try to explore the relationship between structural violence and how this impacts what we consume. Environmental destruction, our broken medical and educational systems in the West and elsewhere, and issues related to racism and Indigenous peoples and more. And there's so many others, just to say that the solidarity around issues related to what we can actualize in our time, speaking truth to power, and addressing the injustices and violence in our world. We are an extraordinary community. And I've just called out the names of some of the inspirators, the change makers in this Maha worldwide community, as a way to say we are not alone. And we have our work cut out for us. And we have our practice calling us. And I want us to stay together. Kozan wants us to stay together and to build in this coming year when things are already pretty outrageous. And we need the strength of our practice and the strength of our relationships and the bodhisattva attitude as ballast as we navigate these rough waters in these coming days, months, and probably years. So Kozan, I'd love to ask you to now to invite the community to open up. And it was kind of a rant. I'm sorry. I'm kind of, at the age of 82, in a certain way, imperatives are more visible. When you're in your ninth decade, you realize, I just want to share it all right now and say, we've got the skillful means and the connections to do this. Let's do it. So Kozan.
Thank you, Roshi. All of our teachers, our inspirations. I wonder if it's time to open up a discussion. And really, you asked one question, which was, how do we actualize non-violence in all aspects of our life? How do we show up to this invitation to give life to life? And I wonder what's coming alive for people around that. What do you think? Should we start there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Dee, I'm going to unmute you if you want to step in and share.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Okay, all right. Well, I have a friend who told me recently that she just started cleaning her closets out. And she was amazed as she went along because there was way more than she figured to take care of. And it just brought to mind, at this time when the devastational effect when Trump was elected before, and how women got it together so quickly and did their knitted pussy hats and got out on the street. It's sort of different this time. And this is sort of what she was addressing, I think, is that love your life where you are, love what you're doing, love your life, take care of what needs to be taken care of. And then we're all kind of in training, and then listen, and it'll kind of manifest and go from there. I mean, there's a children's book called The Country Bunny and Her Little Golden Shoes. And, she's told to go home, and she has about 10, 20 children, and she is so efficient and gets them all organized, and then she can go out. So I like to kind of keep that in mind now, because there's such pressure to do something in my heart. But I have to be patient, and I have to just go through my closets and make sure things are in order, and kind of calm down, just calm down, that things will happen in their own good time.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. Appreciate it.
Dee, I think that we're all moving with the same heart at different velocities. Some of us are in the inhale, and some of us are in the exhale. And it's just, I think one of the important things is not everybody is on fire in the same way I am. I'm glad. And not everybody also wants to actually clean their closets, so to speak. It's not time for them to do that. But for those whether it's the closet of our mind, which is this kind of time of exhale, or it's the inhale into action, or whichever way our breath goes, it's to love the path that each person has chosen to move in the world at their own speed, at their own velocity. So bless your velocity. I see you're driving somewhere. So may you arrive safely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dee. Kuya.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I was extremely moved by having Roshi, you're recalling me to my mind the final words, or the last public words of Alexei Navalny, "Do not give up." And for me, solstice, the day after solstice, is the beginning of the new year. So it's time for New Year's resolutions. And I just wrote this. I wanted to share it. As for me, so it's, what will I not give up? What will I not give up? As for me, even though it is seemingly impossible, I will not give up acting and speaking for universal development of consciousness, that we are not of the earth, we are not on the earth, we do not have dominion over the earth, we are the earth. And what we do for the earth, we do for all beings. When we harm the earth, we harm all beings. I will not give up.
Oh, Kuya, you're the best. Thank you. What do you think, Kozan?
Yeah, let's not give up. Thank goodness we have each other. Yeah.
Thank you, Kuya.
Oh, Marjorie's hand just disappeared. So, Judith.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
I think one of the issues that's not addressed very often is nuclear war.
Yeah.
And I participate in the International Physicians for Social Responsibility, and also for PSR, which is Physicians for Social Responsibility, that I helped to found in 1979 and 1980.
Wow.
I think that of all the transcendent issues of our time, as much as social injustice or reproductive rights or the war in Ukraine or specific things, I think that we have to keep working on nuclear war.
Hear, hear. Yes. I'm sure you know Father John Deere.
I mostly know Helen Caldicott.
Yeah, well, you too. I mean, what you're saying is absolutely spot on. And since we're across the valley from Los Alamos, it's in our view field every single day. So thank you for bringing this forward, and thank you for your work.
Thank you for letting me talk.
Yeah.
And thank you for your work.
Thank you, Judith. Marjorie, you're back. There's the hand. Hi. You're unmuted. Go ahead.
Deep thanks to Roshi, Joan, Kozan, Kodo, everybody, all of you, Paya. My perspective is very much influenced by the fact that I also am 82. And I had the great privilege to learn at the feet of Congressman Tom Lantos and Mrs. Annette Lantos, the only Holocaust survivors to be in Congress, as their human rights assistant in the district for 22 years. One thing I learned along the way that I think can help all of us is, I think what Roshi Joan is saying and what Rebecca Solnit is saying is when Eleanor Roosevelt succeeded in getting agreement to a non-binding Universal Declaration of of Human Rights in 46, she emphasized that human rights is a matter largely of developing human rights cultures everywhere, at home, at work, at play, everywhere. And so when it has not yet been developed, and we don't have yet the covenants that we got in the 60s and later, everybody was building human rights everywhere at home all the time. Second, we find ourselves now in a disintegrating situation. What can we do? What should we do? where are the most important pressure points for regarding structural violence now. We all get lots of things in email. Could we have your $5, $3, $7, not get a latte? I humbly very much suggest one thing in the short run, very important in every peaceful legal way, to counter with public petitions and whatever way we can the current nomination to the Defense Department, which is the effort to take over the means of force and power and to direct them inwardly to this country in order to frighten people more. The way to do that right now is every which possible way to counter that with a little money, a little help, petitions. Number two, in the longer run, the most important thing to keep our eyes on is the rights of people detained. So that is the rights of people and legal access to people detained. That is then people detained on the way to deportation, people detained because they're journalists and they used a whistleblower and they want to keep confidence, but the law is fuzzy there. And a new administration is likely to try to imprison journalists. Yeah. Every effort to protect legal access to journalists. Then the rights of human rights activists is also extremely important, all the way along in every which way, again, legally and peacefully. The right of habeas corpus, which a government can attempt to suspend, must not be allowed to suspend. Even Lincoln apparently suspended it temporarily. We must not let that be suspended. So every group that you see that is decent, that is working on that, and preferably with a very good reputation in Congress, like Amnesty International or other ones that don't ring the buttons of woke or something like that, but even any organization that you
Marjorie,
with those, that's it.
This is incredible. What I'd love you to do is to, if you will, send that link to Upaya, and with that list, to Upaya with links if you can, and we'll put it on the resource page. This is just really important.
Thank you so much. You're very kind. I am recovering from some mild illness, and I think as I mentioned humbly to you when I met you a couple of weeks ago in Santa Fe at Wednesday night on the 27th, I am doing a lot of caregiving. So I will do my best.
Thank you.
Write something. Thank you so much.
But, what you've shared is really powerful. And thank you. Again, going back to Navalny, an example of what putting oneself in harm's way when one speaks truth to power, and the cost can be your life.
I would encourage people to be careful about what is skillful means. How much should I be doing, and not just jump into risk that then where the benefit is not so much as to be the problems to other people who then need to defend you.
Well, that's also true, but Thich Nhat Hanh was not altogether cautious. And, in his 9th order of interbeing mindfulness training, he just said, even if it costs your life. So I think there's a whole spectrum of responsiveness and yes. I think skillful means, but also sometimes we have to actually go pretty
Depends
far.
on the person, the situation, the conditions.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Marjorie. Big hug to you.
Judy.
Thank you. Am I unmuted now? Thank you very much. And thank you so much for this session. And Marjorie, some of your suggestions really I found extremely helpful. So thank you. I find myself, and I'm focusing right now more on the U.S. and the U.S. political situation and ramifications. I'm very much still into the deep not knowing. Like, I know it's bad, But how bad is it going to get? And with every name that gets raised for various cabinet and positions and ambassadorships, etc., it becomes somewhat alarming. I project into the future rather than staying more in the present moment. Again, I'm kind of in the not knowing phase, and maybe that's okay, but I don't want to get stuck in the not knowing phase. I just finished a book. It's a fiction book, and one of the passages was about German citizens in World War II that lived nearby the train lines that were running to take the Jews and others that were being shipped off to concentration camps. And kind of the notion of these people knowing but not knowing, knowing what was going on, but living their lives. And one of the things that I am very concerned about for our future in the U.S. is the immigration situation and the camps that people will be in and deportation. Kind of that's, to me, our version of the people being shipped off to concentration camps, families separated, etc. And I'm finding I'm lacking imagination in terms of where I apply my energies. And so having some specific ideas or suggestions, as Marjorie suggested, is extremely helpful. I also find myself being torn. I'm just on the verge of retirement. I'm 75. I've worked many years. I've got a lot of kids and grandkids, and there's part of me that's just like, I want to focus on my grandkids and be there for my grandkids, and that's what I should be focusing on. And so how one spreads their time between family commitments and love and nurturing, and then, these bigger systemic needs that are right in our faces now. So I just wanted to share that I'm in the not knowing, but knowing I need to do something and not be a bystander. So thank you.
Well, thank you for the work you've already done in your writing. I think you've written a book called, what is it, Coming Home?
No, I haven't. I wish I haven't written a book, but I'm in the process of writing a book.
And what's your book about?
It's about the long struggle of coming to grips with childhood trauma and addiction, and kind of learning some of the realities that were pushed way down deep, and coming to grips with them and learning how to readjust behaviors and actions into right actions, and not relying on, the old way of doing things that were ways that helped one cope and survive at times, but aren't useful for the future. So that's.
But this sounds not only important for your grandchildren and also you, but for many others. I mean, and the roots of addiction. So, what do you think, Kozan? Sit with not knowing?
Well, yeah, I love what Virginia Parkham has put in the chat, which is we're always not knowing, whether we know it or not. Which, there's teasing out these two different relationships to not knowing can be useful, which is a not knowing that is absolute, that includes kind of actually a deep knowing to it, which is a knowing of our belonging to one another and to the whole world. And that opens up when we don't kind of occlude our awareness or our experience or our sensibility with all of our knowings, all of our stuff. And that's always happening, whether we know it or not, as Virginia reminds us. And I think kind of putting in some work right now as we go through this huge political and social transition, at least here in America, but also globally, to really understand these two ways of relating to the world is useful. And we're kind of seeing it happen at scale. And I guess what I mean by that is we really want to know what's going on. We always want to know what's going on. And even the notion of the world is a kind of modern idea. You know, we have all this media telling us what's happening where, and we know the zip code of Earth and the solar system, and you know how many people are on the planet, and we know what suffering's going on today or maybe yesterday. There's all this kind of at the touch of a finger. We have all this knowledge. And then we have this sense, well, if I really pay attention, I can get my arms around the world as it is. And this isn't new. We've always wanted to know what's going on. But the feeling of it is new. And our teachers tell us that, and the Dharma tells us that in this way, in the way of kind of knowing the world, we're always looking at it through a bamboo shoot. We're always looking at the sky through this kind of tiny view. We only ever see a piece. And so there's ways in which we externalize that desire to know everything to other people. Right now, it's, as Roshi said earlier, rich and powerful people, billionaires, plutocrats, oh, well, they know what's going on. And then we have to put in the effort to look towards people who lead with their heart and not with that kind of head. And that's what Roshi's invited us to. But that knowing of the world is always relative and always worthwhile, but always kind of not our sense of really being with each other and being with the world. So this not knowing of just actually being connected in this really deep and unmitigated way is what we return to. And I think right now there's going to be a lot of confusion, a lot of change. And so bringing us back there, Judy, as you have, and Virginia, as you have with your reminder, and I think as we do for each other when we return this way monthly in Gathering Dharma, is a way not to kind of zone out or opt out, but to remember who we really are, what's really important. So we can show up to our lives, which are always kind of not fully informed, you know, we never are. And that's just the way it is. So that's, I think, kind of our work right now, maybe always. Yeah.
Oh, Kozan, thank you.
Thank you.
Really.
Shall we, Roshi, anything else?
Oh, you know, I can just go on, but I'd like to hear from more people.
Okay, good. Susan, I'm going to unmute you.
Oh, great. Hi. Hi. I wanted to read something that Pema Chodron said. She says, start now. Start where you are, with whatever you have. Start with fear. Start with doubt. Start with hands shaking. Start and don't stop. Just start, she says. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Susan. Caroline.
Hi, thank you, Roshi. Thank you. Sensei, I'm sorry. I don't remember names very well. So I'd like to voice this. I feel very, very strongly that as activists, we absolutely get out of the sun. We absolutely have to take care of our nervous system. I'm seeing too many people with frayed nervous systems, really upset. And I think one of the challenges is to be informed and not be activated. So what I tell my peeps is, hey, don't watch TV anymore. Don't see the images. I know you're supposed to bear witness, but pull back and read instead, and read preferably more neutral sources. There are those out there. There's a new news service. It's one person. I mean, there's a whole group of people doing it, but there's one person who's really in charge. It's called Tangle, Tangle. It's free. You can also do a premium. And it's looking at the political news, both from neutral, from the left and the right, and presenting it in a more neutral fashion. And I'm finding that reading that keeps me informed without activating this soft animal of a body of mind. I also think we need to attend to the real basics: sleep, exercise, and in the US, we are so underslept. Good food, not too much of it. Yeah.
Thank you. You know, there's a wonderful term that Cinda Rushton, who's the top ethicist at Johns Hopkins, uses and we teach. It's called self-stewardship. And I think this is absolutely essential in terms of us staying vital, engaged, grounded, and flourishing, thriving in the midst. So thank you. I really appreciate you reminding us and reminding yourself how important the very basics are in order to serve deeply. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. I just want to say that it's a lived experience. I'm using this. This is my contribution to the world. I'm using this with people who are very upset, and I don't charge anything, and it makes such a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your practice.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your inspiration. Thank you, Sangha.
So Roshi, we're in the last couple minutes, and I wonder if you have any words you want to share in our final gathering this year.
Well, I think I want to share a lot of gratitude, beginning with our collaboration, Kozan. It's so wonderful to bring our energies together, equal and different. And also, our shared commitment to actualize the practice in service to others. And then for the community, that has gathered with us over these years to continue nourishing, building, and exploring with the community. And to say, Kozan and I, and now Dinan, Wendy Lau, we're starting a new series. We're beginning in January, actually, called Awareness in Action. And I want every single person to join us. Let us continue with Bhikkhu Bodhi and John Kabat-Zinn and Ruth King and Gregory Boyle, Father Gregory Boyle, and Terry Tempest Williams and Rebecca and others. So we need to keep building the community, and also good self-stewardship, and also solidarity as we move forward into this coming time. What about you, Kozan?
Well, gratitude for you, Roshi, and your virya, above all, this joyful effort in gathering us all together and sharing practice. And, Roshi's just, invited us all to continue next year, and she's put in a great deal of effort and work in creating a space and a container for some of the great teachers of our time to join us and for us to just come together. So that's no small thing, and it's a real gift to all of us. And I hope we continue to gather in this way, that it nourishes us, and that we, show up together to figure out how to meet the world that's really in an unusual time. And it's the end of the year, so I want to really make the invitation. I know many of you have supported Upaya and supported us doing this month after month, but if you haven't, or if there's the invitation to continue to support Upaya, I hope you will, as this year closes and as we begin anew in January. And I know Kodo will put a link in the chat, and you can just go to the website as well, to Upaya's website. But really grateful to everyone who continues to show up month after month and practice together. Thank you all.
See you in January.
Yeah, see you all
Thank
in
you.
January. Take care, everyone. Be well. And be in touch.